hard. I'm going to cheat and I'm going to give you two. So for fashion, the Antivan crows all day long. Their threads, you're going to love it. For vibes, though, like the ones that capture my vibe, Morn Watch. Give me those necromancers.
Those are good answers. I have one for fashion and also for just general faction I'd like to be a part of. Veil Jumpers. Who doesn't like a nice walk in the forest, you know? Uh, Even if that forest is filled with horrifying monsters and terrifying anomalies. But yeah.
I love that. I know that Matt has a few technical issues. Oh, he's unmuted. Here we go. Or maybe not. That's okay. I think we can move on.
The fate has taken Matt.
That's right.
Yes.
That's right.
One quick thing, if you check your settings with the cogwheel on the bottom left, make sure that your voice, like your audio is all good. If you're still hearing the music, feel free to maybe force quit Discord and rejoin by just joining the stage directly and mute the music before you come in. Okay, I can move on to the next question for now. I've seen so this question was from Accra. I've seen a lot of talk about only having 2 companions in your party instead of 3 for this game. What is the reasoning behind this, and will we still get the same companion conversations and banter as seen in the previous Dragon Age games?
Ooh, this is such a good question. Thank you, whoever submitted this one. Yeah, I guess I'll start and then I'll turn it over to John Eckler. So, first of all, as you saw in the gameplay reveal, this is a much more intimate experience. We've pulled the camera in. For those that aren't aware, the reason why is we want you to feel like you actually are in this world, right? Like you're walking these city streets of Minrathous, you're looking up, seeing the buildings all around you. You're a part of this place. So it's much more intimate, and we believe as the narrative unfolds, this creates a lot more immersion. Now, how that relates to companions is in doing this, we went back and forth on it a lot, but we actually found with this perspective, having 2 companions really allows them more visibility and presence. We've talked about the incredible depth and focus we put on fleshing out these companions. They're very fully realized. So here you really get to see them more clearly. You get to see them shine. When you see Lace Harding jump into the air and unleash a volley of arrows, like you can only really get that because of that more intimate view. So I love the spotlight that's been put on them. But I think in addition to the banter, one of the things that people are wondering about is, okay, but what about gameplay? So again, this has come about from our testing, working with the internal team, also our lovely council of players. We just found that when you're playing in the combat system, when you're planning your strategies, 2 really felt like the right number to manage. So keep in mind, Rook has a lot of different types of actions, abilities, individual attacks that are more fully fleshed out than ever before. Timing and positioning matter a lot. So this really felt like the right balance to have. The number of inputs and actions we're asking you as a player to take, including directing your companions, is higher than ever before. And I will also say, I engage with the companions. Like I actively control what they're doing more than I ever have before in any of the other 3 games. But John, I'll toss it over to you for the banter. That's kind of like the we got a 2 for 1
Yeah,
here.
yeah.
I think that's a
So
great question.
it's a good question. Yeah, I mean, honestly, I don't think you could actually stop the writers from writing banter. I will say for myself, it's one of the more light but fun things to do. You get to write little stories, little arcs between different characters, and I mean, the Veilguard is no different. Banter is still absolutely core part of it. You know, we've got global banter, you know, the general stuff that you get in all spaces as well as mission specific stuff. But yeah, it's definitely still a big thing. I think it's, and if anything, it's the most we've ever done for pairings of companions. Beyond that, we've also made sure, and I mean, I've been on Dragon Age for a while, and I know there's been issue, things like, okay, well, I don't want to miss this banter. So we've even added stuff like some interruptible and resumable banter as well, just to make sure that, because again, it's a core part of the experience. Everyone loves hearing these companions talk to each other. Everyone loves hearing these little stories and relationships develop over the course of the game. And as mentioned before, companions are the heart of this experience, and banter is a big part of that. So you still have it. It's like, if anything, like I said, you could not stop the writers from doing it, even if we tried.
That's right. That's right. Well, and John, listening to you speak, one thing that comes to mind, maybe people are wondering, with two companions in the field, do I get less interaction between that? Like, do I get to see my companions interacting
Oh,
with the broader group more often? And the way you'll gather them around the kitchen table, there's just so many of those moments where they're all interacting with each other. Those
well,
are
I
some of my
think,
favorite parts.
yeah, and I think, and actually that's a good call, because I think the other side of it is, we're not talking too much about your home or anything, but we also want to make sure that they feel like they have relationships and a life outside of just the times you take a certain pair of companions out on the field. So we've made sure that they have those interactions there as well.
Love that. Let's see. Matt, are we all set, or are we good? Yes? No? Okay, I can continue and we can come back to some of your questions. All right, so that I loved the answers to those. How customizable is the backstory of Rook? Will we get to determine their past in the character creator? And that was asked by Briar.
Yeah, so absolutely. So one of each Rook has 6 different backgrounds that you can choose from. Each of them is tied to one of the major factions in the Veilguard, and each one sets out who Rook was before they were recruited by Varric. And well, that sets out the broad events as you go through the game, as you have conversations either with members of your faction, other characters. You can define not just what those events were, but what they meant to you. What was your motivation? What was the kind of person you are as you build up Rook? Because again, we want to make sure that role playing is at the heart of this experience, and taking Rook, giving them background to ground them in the world, but then letting you decide what that means and what that says about you is also a big part of it. So, and again, there are 6 different factions in this game, 2 which anyone who's played Dragon Age for a while remember. You got the Grey Wardens, you've got the Antivan Crows. We also have, in addition to that, we have 4 new ones because we're in Northern Thetis. We have the Veil Jumpers, we have the Morn Watch, we have the Shadow Dragons, and we have the Lords of Fortune. So again, a lot of different options, a lot of different background, and a lot of opportunities to really define who your Rook was and who they are now. So.
Amazing. Will crafting return? If yes, has it been improved over the system in Inquisition? Asked by some dude.
Testing.
Some
Oh,
dude.
hey,
Is
Matt.
that, I'm gonna assume some dude is a username. Great question.
Yes.
Oh, and Matt, the lovely Matt Rhodes.
Testing.
Welcome. Hello. All right. So will crafting return? You can absolutely improve and customize your gear. Yes. Like, that is a big part of RPG progression. So yes, you can improve and customize it. I will say though, it's different this time around, and it does get into spoiler territory. So I'm going to be a little bit cagey about it, but there might be a mysterious entity that assists you with that. That'll be an important part of the narrative.
So mysterious.
Ooh.
Matt, I'm gonna actually go back to our first question so that you can answer, so everyone
Thank you.
knows what faction you would choose if you could choose one for yourself.
Absolutely. For me, it's definitely the Lords of Fortune. I've had a chance to try out a bunch of them, but I think I've finally settled on them, and it's largely just because Pirate Barbarian is just such a great combination of elements. So treasure hunting, plus beaches and palm trees and all that stuff. It's a really good mix. So that's kind of my default.
I think I'm with you there for sure. How about this one? This one was definitely asked, probably amongst the most in Discord. Absolotl asks, Can we kiss or romance Manfred the skeleton?
I would say not that skeleton, but we're not saying no skeletons.
I love that answer.
This is my favorite answer so far.
All right. So I'm gonna get back on track here. All right. What were some of the development considerations that you had to take into account to ensure that this new game flows and functions with prior games and Dragon Age Keep, if Keep is being utilized?
Ooh, that's a good one too. So, first of all, I would point everyone to, we did an interview with IGN that goes into some of the details there. So, like, if you want a deeper dive on it, check out that article. But just to summarize, we have taken a different approach on how you import your decisions this time around. It's now actually been fully integrated into the character creator, and kind of serves a dual purpose, to be honest. I play. It's not called this in game, but I playfully think of it as last time on Dragon Age.
I love that.
Right. Now, when I talk about its dual purpose, it's been 10 years since the last Dragon Age game release. So it serves as a refresher on critical events, as well as allowing you to remake those decisions that are critical to you. The thing I love about it is it's very highly visual. It uses the familiar tarot card aesthetic. So it's actually a really visual and playful experience as you go through it. It is very much important to us that it's built into the client, though. You can play this game entirely offline. No connection. You don't have to link to your EA accounts. Like, that's been a really big request. So the refresher plus make those decisions in client, I think we're all pretty happy about that. I don't want to spoil anything by revealing what decisions you can import. Like, look, you all don't want the spoilers, but I will say it's been a really interesting creative intersection for us, because on the one hand, this is a whole new adventure. You're in Northern Thetis, these locations that you've literally never been to before. So that affects some of what will matter and what we're not using this time around as far as decisions. But obviously, there's some very, very clear connections to existing characters. It's no secret that the Inquisitor, our dear Inky, is going to show up. So that's a factor.
Ichi asks, will this next game be an open world game, or is it just contained to Tevinter?
Yeah, that's a great question. So you are in Northern Thetis, but the game only begins in Minrathous. It doesn't stay there. I think one of the most exciting things for me, honestly, and again, to Crin's earlier point about spoilers, I don't want to get into too much spoiler detail, but getting to go to and work with the art team, work with the narrative, work with the design team to build out these locations that we've talked about, places that characters have referred to as where they've come from, places that characters obviously in previous games have hailed from, has been absolutely exciting. So it's you do start at Tevinter, you do start in Minrathous, but again, that's not the entire game by any stretch. So yeah.
Yeah, and the first half of it is it an open world game? We've gone back to what we believe delivers the best, most curated, intense narratives. So this is a handcrafted experience. It's mission based. Now, these locations can open up. You can go back, solve mysteries, do some really great side content. Not fetch quests, not grind quests, some really great side content. But I want to be clear, it's a really curated, handcrafted experience.
And just to bounce off of that very quickly is the most important thing for us to what Corinne was saying about handcrafted. Obviously, we've talked about how narrative story characters are critical to us, and this has allowed us to build these experiences in a way that emphasize that extremely well. While still, again, tying into the story threads and the story beats. So
Awesome. Tasteful Toxel wants to know, will the companions have unique specializations like Dragon Age 2, or will it be the same ones we will have access to as the player in like DA Origins or Inquisition?
Oh, cool. Hey, Tasteful Toxel. Yeah, so cool question. I think the best way for me to describe this is that, yes, our companions will have abilities that are truly unique to them. But also, the companions do fall into the archetypes of mage, rogue, and warrior. Like, for instance, you might be surprised to hear because she has a bow, but Valara is in fact a mage, and I love that. So, some of the abilities, the bulk of the abilities of the companions, are based on their own unique personality. Like, Nev is the only mage that is an ice mage, so you get distinct abilities for her. Uh, but because she's a mage, she does have access to uh, abilities that all of the mages share, like time slow. So we really like the balance there. It's like a good mix of representing their archetype, their class, and also their distinct specialization or personality, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, actually, I would actually say the word personality is a really great one because that's, again, each of these characters exists. Each of these characters have a history, have a story of how they became who they were. And part of that was finding that intersection between narrative and gameplay and making sure that, again, we serve the needs of gameplay, but also allow these characters to breathe and exist as their own people, not just in conversations, but out of conversations as well.
I would also say, as part of that core mage kit, healing spells are there. So any of your mages, you want to make them a healer, do that.
Luna Soul Dark Moon asks, will the Veilguard have tactical combat still?
Oh, such a good one. Such a good one. Okay. Yes, combat gets quite tactical. Like, obviously, this is an evolution of the combat system. And I talked about immersion, wanting you to put you in the world, like you're actually living and existing in it. But it is very tactical. And I will say, we have a robust difficulty system. The tactics are increasingly important the higher difficulty level you go. So, like, look, if you're showing up for a highly tactical experience, I would crank that difficulty level in particular. But I want to make clear I want to make sure I'm super clear in my answer. You saw the gameplay reveal. Our pause time tactical mode is not overhead. It stays close to Rook. It does allow you to cycle between targets, both in and out of combat. There's a reason for that. As the game progresses, and you didn't see this in that opening hour of the game, but it'll display strategic information on the enemies. So, like, what are their vulnerabilities? What are their elemental weaknesses? Their enhancements? What are they resistant to? So, your type of abilities leaning into elemental gameplay matters a lot. I'd also say this is a long answer. It's such a good question. Tactical decision making also takes the form, I would say this is front and center, of coordinating your ability usage between Rook and your companions to create synergies or really devastating, we call them detonation combos. So let me give you a couple of examples because it can be a little hard to visualize. So hopefully this helps. So one of the tactics that I personally enjoy in my own builds, I just recently played as a Veil Ranger. I love it. It's one of my favorites. If I'm fighting Fade-touched enemies in Arlethan, I like to use Balara's Galvanized Tear to pull enemies together. Like it's like a gravity well. You then slow time with Nev, and slow time affects the world around you, but it does not affect you. So you clump them up, you slow time, and then with Rook, I come in and do like a devastating AoE or damage over time spell or ability. And it's even better if it's a lightning-based ability because the Fade Touched and Arlethan are vulnerable to that. So there's so many layers of coordination and strategy and tactics. Now, we did talk about the devastating, like, detonation combos. Honestly, that's probably one of my favorite features because that's when you're really leaning into explicit teamwork between your companions and Rook or the companions together. So when I build out my team and I'm going into a mission, I try to ensure that I have at least a couple of possible synergies, detonation combo synergies within my team. It might be between Harding and Nev, or it might be between Nev and me, or it might be both. So here, I would go into battle, I'd pause time, open the ability wheel, get information on the enemy, and the wheel will actually tell me that there is a synergy combo. You might have seen a screenshot that says combo available. It will remind you of those synergies between companions. You can queue both of those abilities up at the same time. Go close out of the pause time menu. They'll both execute. Both abilities will happen. Then the detonation AoE happens. Applies debuffs to all the enemies in a radius of it. It's so satisfying. I can't wait for y'all to see it. But the interesting thing is that too is a tactical choice. I'm choosing to use my companions to do that. And that means in that moment, I'm not using them to heal me or to give me that defense bonus or to knock an enemy off a ledge. So it's about the opportunity cost. I could spend the rest of the session talking about this. Apologies for being long-winded, but this is just one of my favorite parts of the game.
That was a great answer. Can you choose Rook's pronouns? If yes, being non-binary an option? And also, how detailed is character creation?
Oh yeah, you can select your pronouns. Absolutely. You can actually select both your pronouns and your gender because those are related concepts, but they're not actually the exact same thing. So it's really cool. Yeah, you can be non-binary. We have they, them, she, her, he, him. Yes, emphatic yes. How detailed is the character creator? Oh my goodness, y'all. Very. I don't want to give away too much just yet, but it's very, very deep. It has been revealed. It's out there in a couple of articles about the focus on hair, the focus on skin tones that are done respectfully, full body customization. Hell yeah, we love to see it. But we're gonna come back. We're gonna show you a lot more on character creator, but we want to make sure we have the time and space to do that.
Will there be a photo mode in game?
So that is something we're actively looking into. We know there's a ton of interest, so stay tuned on that one, but we are very much looking into it.
I can add too, that is a feature that we like the idea of, and it's not just player facing, but internally it's a really helpful thing for us as we're building things out to have that. So it's we'll let you know.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. We are as geeked on that possibility as you all are.
A lot of people were asking about abilities. This one is from Clemmy. Abilities, I don't think I saw this answered yet, but are we going to be limited in how many abilities we can pick from the wheel?
Yes. So ability wheel does have a capacity. You'll have to choose which 3 abilities you want to bring for Rook, which 3 for one of your companions, and which 3 for another companion. And what I like about this is there is kind of an emergent gameplay depending on who you and your companions are coming into the mission with. Now, the reason for that is it actually creates a really interesting balance of strategizing, having to do that strategy about your kit, your combat kit, before the mission, and then the tactical decisions once you're in the field in combat, deciding what to do. But I do want to clear one thing up, because while there are 3 ability slots for Rook, there's so much more than that. Other actions that you can perform directly from the wheel include you'll have an ultimate ability associated with your class or your specialization. So there's variance there. There's a type of items that you'll get that function like abilities. They're typically like buffs and enhancements in the form of runes. So you'll control that for Rook and or the team from the wheel. You may have also seen that you can direct which targets your companions will focus on. But what you might not know is that a lot of the companion gear really synergizes with that directing your companions. When you issue those commands, that too will proc based on the gear they have equipped. Really interesting and strategic effects. So they can be more ability-like, more like proc effects. There's just so much from the wheel that once you get in and see everything working together, becomes more and more apparent.
We have another question from Tasteful Toxel, which is: will Fireball and Cone of Cold be back as skills or as spells in Dragon Age: The Veilguard?
Oh, I love all these combat questions. Really good. So, Fireball and Cone of Cold aren't specifically back. However, their successors are Frost Nova and Meteor. So these serve the exact same combat role and function as those other abilities. I would also say it gives them quite the glow up. So Meteor in particular, like so satisfying nuking a group of Darkspawn with a well-placed Meteor. It's really wonderful.
And what accessibility features are available? I would love to know if there's an arachnophobia mode. Will there be mod support?
Oh my goodness. Arachnophobia. I am wicked afraid of spiders too. My partner always laughs at me. I'm just terrified of them. That said, that's one we're going to save for a little bit closer to launch before we'll go into full details about accessibility features. But I do want to assure you we've spent a lot of time thinking about this topic so you can play the game in a way that really works for you. I'm excited to share that with you when the time is right.
So this one is from a username named Cookie. How long is the time skip from Inquisition to the Veilguard? I know we'll probably get more info on this, but I'm so curious.
Yeah, so anyone who's paid attention to Dragon Age, and I can say as somebody who's been on Dragon Age since Origins, timelines are always a little iffy. They change and they morph over development as we see how long events taking. But for the Veilguard, we were actually pretty consistent from the start that it's been about 10 years since the events of Trespasser. As you may or may not have noticed, Varric's become a little bit of a silver fox. I know, so I've seen a lot of comments on that on social media, but yeah, 10 years. Stolas's ritual is taken time to set up, and you're kind of coming in at the end of that hunt. So
City is asking the hardest hitting question, which is Solus still bald?
Yeah, I mean, if you've watched the gameplay thing, we can all confirm, yes, Solus is still bald. Solus is still Solus. I really like how Solus has turned out this time around. I will say, here's a comment on this specific question that's going to sound like a non sequitur, but once you get a chance to play it a little bit more, maybe you'll see it. In Thedas, ancient elves, they go bald when they're like millennia old. So Solus wasn't always bald. So if you were end up seeing what Solus looked like in the past, things might be a little different.
now, now that said, I'm sure some of you are wondering what happened to Solus's wig from Tevinter Nights. I'm sure he still has it somewhere. So
He's just taking care of it elsewhere.
he's just taking care. It's his most important possession.
The pride there, huh?
I have another one from Matt. This is: will we be able to change companions' appearances and outfits, or are they fixed, similar to Dragon Age 2?
Yeah, Dragon Age 2 was we loved how the followers turned out in that, but it was sad given our constraints that we had to keep them with just one basic outfit. So we really tried to make some space for them this time around. So they still have kind of iconic color palettes and things like that, but they do have a wider range appearances that you can find for them. Some are just cool, but then there are some that are tied directly to their narrative and just kind of what's happening in their life.
Another one for you, which is, will we be seeing or visiting Kal Sharok? And Tyrant says that they've been obsessed with it forever.
Yeah, me too. I will say what's been really cool. So in previous games, we've kind of alluded to this before. It was a lot of fun to hint at the locations that were off the map, the mysterious places that you weren't going to go, where you weren't going, and so you could just bring in some props or some characters, a piece of art. Things like that, even Tevinter was only vaguely hinted at, and then we would just add drips and bits and pieces. So that stuff was really fun. In the Veilguard, we're actually getting to visit like a whole lot of those locations that had only been hinted at for real. So you actually do run around Tevinter and a bunch of the other locations that we've revealed. But this also means like we're not completely filling out the map. And so that there are actually new things that we can start hinting at, that we can start drip feeding. And so it's kind of fun. I'd say, yeah, for what we can show of Kal Sharok and other locations, it's just there's more to do.
Awesome. Mr. Fight Monster 118 asks, will the dialogue wheel / options be similar to Inquisition and Mass Effect Andromeda in the sense that it's more tone based?
Yeah, so we have a number of different types of wheels in our game. All the dialogue wheels are based off the same principle. Anyone who's played a Dragon Age game remembers what they look like. In Dragon Age the Veilguard, we have tone wheels, which are, again, role-playing your character, picking consistent tone. We also have emotion wheels where you can pick specific emotional reactions. And choice wheels, which are, I don't have a strong emotional or tone tie here, but I do want to make a choice based on what I do. Investigates obviously return as well, but we do want players to understand as much as possible what it is they're going to be picking and understand. And again, choice and consequence is fun. We want to make sure the choice is clear, even if, again, one of the best parts about consequence is making sure that's not entirely clear. So.
How extensive are Rook's decision trees for dialogue going to be with the companions and also with NPCs throughout the game?
Huge. I mean, again, it's a Dragon Age game. We want to make sure you have choices. We want to make sure you can choose both your role playing, but also choose outcomes of conversations, choose how events unfold. So, I mean, again, it's a Dragon Age game. We want to make sure that we also react to decisions you've made. So, for example, you may be talking to a follower who is an elf, and if you yourself are an elf, obviously you're going to have a different perspective on events than someone who's not an elf. Sometimes that means different conversation options. Sometimes that's going to be an entirely unique dialogue trees, as well as based off decisions you've made throughout the game. So again, making sure that the game feels like it's noticing what you're doing is a huge part of how we've written out the dialogue wheel or dialogue trees in this game.
Blueberry has a question for Corinne. It was mentioned that that we will be able to romance who we like. Does that mean that all companions are romanceable by all player characters, regardless of race or gender, as it has been in the past?
Yeah. So we have talked about this in some of the interviews. I've seen a few articles about it, so I'd recommend everyone check out those articles. But let me just give you a quick overview. Each of the 7 companions have full romance arcs, and they are romanceable by all genders. Absolutely. But something that's really important to us on the team, so I want to make sure that we clarify and just double down on, that doesn't mean player sexual. And if anyone's unaware of what we mean by that, it doesn't mean that they conform or twist their identities to who you, the player, are. Like they won't suddenly have a preference for men or women based on what you're playing, right? Instead, they have their own fully fleshed out identities. They are true and authentic to that. So in this game, they are all pansexual with their own histories of romance. Sometimes you'll hear about preferences or things of that nature. And what I really love is if you don't pursue a romance with them, they'll actually build their own romances with each other. So in one of the interviews, I talked about Lace Harding and Tosh getting together. I give that example because honestly, it's one of my favorites. I'm going to put a question back to the community, though. I've heard we're going with Lash for that ship name. You tell me, like, what is that ship name?
That one just rolls off the tongue. I feel like that works. This next question is from Fallen Artesia. What are the markings on the faces of the Elven Warden and Veilhopper?
So there's quite a few, more, probably I think easily more than we've done before. Tattoos from various cultures. We're bringing the Valislan back, of course, but there's a ton of different options, especially when we're again going into all these new regions. Each area has its own kind of visual language for that. But yeah, we are bringing the Valislan back, and then a couple of the characters have them. But we've kind of customized them a little bit. They're a bit more specific to their personality.
And this is a question for all of you. What are you as a developer most proud of about the game, and what are you most excited for players to experience when it's out?
Ooh, that's a good question. Corinne,
Isn't
you want
it?
to go first?
Yeah, sure. Gosh. So I suspect for most of us, myself included, it is really going to be the depth and authenticity of the companions, journeying along with them on their arcs, learning about their hardships, what they care about, being by their side. That authenticity is just so good. They all feel like my dear friends. But I have to say, the closest runner-up for me has to be the character creator. Has to be. That character creator, the makeup options, the range of sliders. I'm a Kunari fan, so even just the way you customize the horns and combine that with the really great looking hair, character creator has to be my like very close runner up.
Well, yeah, for me, I would say, as far as what I can say I'm most proud of on this one, I can speak for the art team. We worked incredibly hard to make the story more visible than ever. Games are a visual medium, but sometimes it's easier to do things in text format or written in a codex somewhere or alluded to off screen. But we really leaned into trying to make sure that every design, prop, character, environment, the VFX we're choosing, all these choices, we're putting the story on screen so that you can really see it unfold. And I think, having worked on all of the Dragon Age games, I would say Veilguard represents one of the best attempts at that we've made yet.
I'm going to cheat because I'm going last, and I get to do that when I go last, and kind of combine both Corinne's and Matt's answer. Honestly, the companions are, for me, the absolute highlight. Just being able to work across all the disciplines, building characters who look and sound and behave in very specific and characterful ways. These are the deepest companion arcs we've ever done, not just on Dragon Age, but at BioWare in general. Each companion has their own story arc you can go through, decisions you can make. They really do take center stage. And I think as you play through them, you see the care and love that the team has put into each and every one. I mean, there's moments in each arc that make you cry, make you angry, make you excited, and the way that they integrate into the story as a whole is just, for me, something that's been really fun. Finding ways to bring these characters together, finding ways to make this narrative, this story of, you need to put together a team and stop the end of the world, is just been absolutely exciting and thrilling. And again, you see the team's love in every single piece of it. As for what I'm most excited, for me, Dragon Age has been part of my career, part of my life for literally the last decade and a half. I've worked on it since Origins, and there's something about the Veilguard that feels like an amazing mix of novelty but also familiarity. It's like coming home in a way that I think is going to be very exciting for people who are existing Dragon Age players. But there's also so much here that's just new and exciting for people, new players and old players alike, and going to parts of the world, seeing things we've never seen before, and just getting to take this amazing world, this amazing series, and expand on it and build on it in ways that have just been honestly an absolute thrill. The best part of my career, and I've been in games for 17 years now. This has been the absolute highlight for me. So that's what I'm excited about.
John, that was such a good answer, and I just want to yes and that. So completely agree with you. There've been times in the companion arcs where even knowing exactly what's going to happen, we work on the game with some of these decisions. I've had to set down the controller, let out a heavy sigh, and go, "Oh my god, what am I going to do here?" Yeah, the depth of them is wonderful, and I do want to say I want to put this out there when we talk about as a developer, what are we most proud of? Can we just give a big shout out to the dev team? I am so proud of them. This team has poured their heart and soul into
Absolutely.
this. Anyone from BioWare who's listening in, thank you so much. Y'all are just the best.
Here, here.
I absolutely love that. I knew that question was going to have some of my some of my favorite answers, and it delivered. So thank you, three. This one's a fun one. Why does Varric have dark hair now? I feel like John mentioned this a little bit earlier, but
Just for
No.
dwarfs.
He's been adventuring for a while now. His hair is more gray, but he's been in very dark scenes so far. So we'll see him in some more context.
and this question we actually took from Tumblr because there were a few really good ones in our Ask box. Will the Inquisitor be appearing in the flesh, or are we just choosing their major Dragon Age Inquisition decisions?
All right. Yeah. Yes, they will. The Inky does appear. We know how attached y'all are to the Inquisitor. I've seen the love for your OC. Yes, the Inquisitor shows up. Now we'd already confirmed that in a few places. So let me just say you can also customize them. It includes some of our new customization options. Yeah, they're gonna show up and they're gonna be your Inquisitor.
And I think beyond that, I mean, the story of Solus and the story of the Inquisitor obviously are tied. They're tied together as much as any story. So it would have been strange for us not to bring them in for this one. They're going to be a part of this story. So
Will there be any planned DLC? Just curious, as I always love the DLCs. Oh, and transmog armor. This one came from Lavelle.
Oh heck yeah. Good question. So right now our focus is entirely on the quality of the game. It's so important at this stage for us to be all in, all attention on just finishing this game and delivering on the quality, the promise of it. So honestly, like that's all I can really say about it. We're 100% focused on this being the most complete game we can make it. I will say, kind of related to that though, and I just want to underscore this. I want to emphasize it. There's not going to be any transactions. There's not going to be any battle passes. You don't have to connect online. Our focus is making this the most complete single player game we possibly can. Now, this was kind of a twofer question. I love when we do that. Will there be transmog? Hell yeah. I'm the kind of player that believes fashion is the real end game. Yeah, there's a transmog system. Absolutely. It's sick.
And then this next question is from Scott. I was asking if any of the characters will be explicitly asexual or on the ace spectrum.
So good. Such a good question. So look, I'm gonna be really forthcoming with y'all and a little bit vulnerable here. Um, I'm ace. I'm a gray ace. I don't mind sharing that. I'm kind of public with it. Um, I will say, though, that none of our companions this time around are explicitly ace. When we look at the characters, their motivations, who they are, we always assess, like, is this the right time? This time it wasn't. But what I will say, um, for everyone on the ace spectrum out there, I would love to represent an ace relationship. Uh, Sometime in the future, when it feels like the most authentic fit for a companion, when we can do it best. Oh, and I do see, some questions. What do we mean by ace? Asexuality. We often refer to it as the ace spectrum.
Can Mage Rook do blood magic? Will blood magic be a skill tree separate from regular magic?
Okay, this gets a little spoilery, so let me just say Rook has some pretty good reasons to avoid blood magic. Rook is not going to want to be interested in that. But I will say the mage skill tree is packed with all kinds of spells, traits, and perks to give you a ton of flexibility in your magic. Gonna go off script just a little bit because I've seen
no.
Kay tell us about the specializations for mage. I'm not gonna tell you the deets, but there is a necromancer one, there is an elemental one, and there is one that's actually more of like a combat mage. It's my favorite.
Can we name the griffin? We also have a griffin emoji now in this Discord server.
Excellent. So someone in your party, again, spoilers, may have already named the griffin, but don't worry, Asan is a very good boy. So
All these griffin emojis y'all are killing me.
Yeah, I love that. Griffin's in the chat. Let's see. Will we have a camp / home / headquarters that we'll be able to customize?
Well, this time around, in Inquisition, you had Skyhold. In this case, you have headquarters called the Lighthouse. More to be seen on that, but it's it narratively it serves a kind of a different purpose, but also the same purpose. As far as customization goes, there are elements of it that change over time, and some things that you can adjust. I don't know how much we're really going into that at the moment. But yeah, I would say it's like there's some. One thing I like about it is that it definitely does start to feel very much like home over time.
Sorry for almost cutting you off there, Matt. We have another very hard-hitting question, if I do say so myself.
I love this one.
We need to, same. We need to know: does pasta and noodles exist in Thetis? Thank you.
Well, and I'll take it as a chance just to geek out about world building, because again, the Veilguard for us is a really kind of dream opportunity to go to places that we've only ever heard reference to or we've seen hints at. And so in going through the world building process and trying to build these places out, not just as neat things from the IP, but also as, if you've read about this stuff, if you've been following along, you've got your own version of it in your head. You've imagined what it might be like. And probably hoping for something spectacular. And our brains are always far better at creating this stuff than any game developer or any artist or anyone can really do justice to. So you really have to swing for the fences to make something very satisfying and exciting. That can be everything as big as architecture and landscape and biomes and ecosystems, but it does get into things like art and culture, costume design, and also food. And this time around, we did, that was one of the many things that we did look into just to try to catch the character and the feel of a place to make it feel believable and lived in. So that's my really long answer for, yeah, I'm sure at least one place does have pasta.
I love that. This next question is from Spectre Caro. Are we getting a Mabari?
Ooh, that's a good question. I will say you're spending most of the game in the north of Thetis. Mabari are not nearly as big of a thing up there, so In this particular instance, no, you will not get a Mabari, sadly.
Honestly, I should have pulled this one up to where we answered the first question about the griffin, but can we pet the griffin?
You, I'm really sorry to have to be the one to tell you. No, I'm kidding. Yes, you can, but it's not even just petting the griffin. This isn't a spoiler. I think you can. I've actually hugged the griffin, so that feels like even there a step up.
There's lots of opportunities to interact with the griffin.
Can we see Asan in chat if we want to see him in the lighthouse hanging out?
Asan in chat, everybody.
On in chat, all right.
I love it.
And hey, y'all, this was so important to the team too. Like this is the team's like just such huge support for this feature. So props to them.
This one is from Coriander. Will we get to see any of the character creator before the game releases?
Yes, you will. We've got you've probably seen we're laying out a roadmap for what we're going to show and when we're going to talk about it. So yes, you will see it as we get a little bit closer to launch.
And then we've got this question, which is, will we be able to play as a Kinari, dwarf, elf, or human?
Hell yeah, you will. All four. And all four have that full body customization. I already talked a little bit about. I mean, listen, I've always loved the Canary. I will say in Dragon Age Inquisition, it was hard to get a good looking Canary hairstyle. So, yes, you can play as them, you can customize them. The horn options are rad, the hair options are rad. And also, I guess related to this, your lineage gives you a lot of really unique dialogue options. So that's a really lovely aspect of choosing your lineage as well.
Yeah, so to actually just to bounce off that, to an earlier question about backgrounds, each lineage, depending on the lineage you choose and the background you choose, there are some specific call outs to, for example, if it's the Morin Watch being a faction from Navarra of mages, you play as a dwarf, obviously your experience in that faction is going to be different than, say, a human or an elf. So there are also specific call outs tailored to those combinations. And with, again, giving the intention of giving each lineage their own little flavor as to how they fit into that faction as a whole.
Hey, John, I've got a question from someone named Joe for you. Where is Barkspawn, and is he okay?
It's a great question. Barkspawn is safely gnawing on a bone next to a fireplace somewhere in Ferelden. Don't worry, he's fine. You may ask yourself, but John, it's been so long, in which I say Mabari live exactly as long as they need to.
Getting into the deep cut questions now.
Deep cut
John.
questions, yeah.
We are really speeding through these. Let's see. Will Rook have a set of default names?
Yeah, so Rook's last name is defined based on their faction. Again, we wanted to tie that into your backstory, but also there's a name generator that can give you a selection of first names. Obviously, if you want to make your own first name, that's definitely something we support as well. If you're somebody who maybe has a little bit more difficulty coming up with a name, so for example, you name every single character Bob because that's the only name you can think of, we also give that opportunity for that generation. So.
I definitely always have trouble coming up with what I want to name my characters, so that's great. This next question is, when will the voice acting cast be announced?
So we worked with a lot of very talented actors on this one. I am super excited to talk about the voice acting cast. We'll be talking about more over the summer. We're not quite ready to announce names yet.
And I think we have a similar answer to this next question, which was, will there be a collector's edition and when can I pre-order?
Yeah, same answer. We have. We'll talk more about the different editions of the game soon.
Are there any special musical guests running the soundtrack? Will tavern songs return?
Oh my goodness, yeah, there are tavern songs, and huge credit to the audio team and performance teams because they're pretty great. There's one at a little tavern in in Minrathous called the Swan, and the song you hear there might just it's up there. It might just be my favorite of the tavern songs.
Let's see. Are there any? Oh, I just asked that one. What are the required PC specs?
Much like the other two, we will have more information on required PC specs soon.
Saf from the Discord server noticed that Dragon Age 2's main theme from the soundtrack brought back much of the iconic thematic material of Origin's main theme, but I heard less of it in Inquisitions. Can we expect the Veilguard's main theme to recall more or less of that original thematic material than Inquisition?
So we're not quite ready to talk about music yet in specifics, but in broad strokes, I can say the process for us is always the same: working with the composer, figuring out themes, figuring out what kinds of elements we want to keep, tying specific elements to maybe specific characters. It's a really in-depth process and a really collaborative process. We have some fantastic audio people on our team that have done an amazing job working with composers and with the team as a whole to make sure that, again, we said earlier about cohesiveness, making sure that the music feels like a cohesive part of the experience.
And this one I see is also for John, but I think anyone can answer this. When writing the overall story of this game, what themes did you want to have as the prominent focus?
I mean, again, it's interesting because when we're writing these games, and this has been true on every Dragon Age I've been part of, what you start with and where you end up aren't always necessarily the same. Sometimes you start writing out a theme, you realize actually it's more interesting if we attack it from this angle, or maybe if we twist it a little bit. I will say for Dragon Age the Veilguard, from the beginning, one of the biggest themes has been regret, how regrets shape people's lives, how people deal with their regrets, how people maybe move past their regrets. And each of the characters, the stories and as a whole have elements of this tied through. We really wanted to have that thematic, that cohesiveness to the game story and the game's writing. So,
And I know that we've kind of already answered this a few times, but can we play as dwarves? And does the world react to your race and backstory? It'd probably be good to just directly answer that one.
yes, you can play as a dwarf. Yes, the world does react to your race backstory, and again, you'll have unique dialogues or unique conversation options based on that backstory and as well as that race.
I'll give you a little nugget here because I saw it scrolling through real quickly. Do you have beards? So when I think about can I play as dwarves, I think about do we have glorious, fantastic beards? Hell yeah, we do.
Yeah, I could say as somebody who plays a lot of games with character creator, the beards on I don't know what magic the character art team did for the beards, but they feel like a beard should feel like. It's great. They look awesome.
I saw somebody say it's beard time. I love it. It's beard time.
Will our heroes and companions leave us if we go against their wishes?
Oh my goodness. Do y'all just love pain? do you want us to make you cry? If you go against their wishes, if you make decisions they don't like, I will tell you, you can piss them off. They might not agree with you, and they will take some time away. That said, this is the biggest threat to Thetis we've ever seen. So they are always going to be willing to show up to defend Thetis, but yeah, you can piss them off and they'll leave for a minute. As it relates to them showing up to defend Thetis, well, yeah, they will, unless...
No spoilers, Corinne.
I'll leave it there.
No spoilers.
Okay, all right. But they want it.
Yep.
Don't try to stop me, Shmee.
This one's a fun one about some inspirations for the game. Draconma would like to know if any songs, books, movies, or anything have had inspired any of the writing for the characters.
I mean, honestly, the thing about art is always a synthesis of your own experiences, both in the real world, but also the art you consume, the art you pay attention to. I don't think that any characters have what I would describe as this character was a direct reference or direct inspiration, but I mean, yeah, they're all inspired by the things that we do, the things both again in the real world, but also in the media we consume, and you're going to see elements of characters the things that we've enjoyed, the things that have shaped us, show up in these characters. I think for me, it comes down to, and I writing is a deeply can be a deeply personal experience. So even if you don't intend for it to be the case, parts of you are going to show up in your characters. I think that's true for all the characters in the Veilguard. And sometimes it's exploring the things that about yourself that you may like or may not like, and it's also about exploring things about characters that you like or don't like. So that's kind of my long-winded way of saying yes. It's impossible to not have that happen when you're creating art. But I don't say that there's one where you can say, oh, this is this character, this is this character.
What was the thinking process behind making Harding a companion this time around? Was she always going to be one, or did it evolve into one because she was such a lovable character?
Oh yeah. So Harding, I mean, when we released Inquisition, it was impossible not to see the love that people had for our murderous girl next door dwarf. She's always been a fan favorite, obviously, but I think beyond that, it's something that Harding's writer wanted to explore. There was more of a story to tell there, and more perspective. And beyond that, Harding obviously has a strong connection to Solus and to the to Varric and to the events of the past 10 years. So I would say it's always been, but I'd say Harding's probably one of the first ones we settled on as like, yes, this is a character we want, and the writer had a story that they wanted to tell with her, so it just made sense.
I think actually to piggyback on that, that's something I hadn't really even thought about that much. And it's not a huge part of her character, but she tends to be one of the people that have the most insight into who he was.
Yeah, that's exact, and yeah, that's a great way of looking at it too. Is it also provides you with a little bit of that perspective for players who've been around, who played with previous Dragon Age games, but also for new ones. Who was Solus? What kind of character was he?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great using characters to provide windows onto the world is honestly one of my favorite things.
And when I say was, I just mean in Inquisition.
Yes, that's exactly it. Yes, thank you for correcting that.
Yeah.
And what approach are you taking to quest and world design in the Veilguard?
I think for us, it just comes down to relevance and narrative heft. We want to make sure that each quest provides either a perspective on the world, a perspective on the characters, or feels immediately and obviously relevant to what you're doing here. You're here to save the world, and at the end of the day, one of the things that we heard loud and clear was some feedback about how relevant, or in our case, not relevant, previous quests have felt. So for Veilguard, we really wanted to make sure that these quests felt like something that somebody faced with the end of the world, would believe was necessary and important. So again, there's quests of all sorts and sizes, but all of them share that same feeling of, this is the kind of thing that the Veilguard would do. This is the kind of thing that my hero would do, especially faced with the end of the world.
Yeah, that's really good, John. That's so right. I would just again double down on how handcrafted all the quests are. Whether you're doing like the main story, or you're journeying with your companions, or you're out exploring and you encounter a mystery. Everything's handcrafted, intentional. We spend a lot of time listening to what y'all said, and of course, everyone has slightly different tastes. But you're not going to be gathering shards in the hinterlands. Everything is built with intention, and a dev there lovingly handcrafting the experience.
Are there any locations in the game that can only be accessed by making specific story choices?
So I don't want to get too much into spoilers here, because this does start getting into spoiler detail, but I will say that locations can fundamentally change based on decisions you make. Some of the parts of the world that you go to, you can have the choices you make have an impact on how these spaces exist and develop. So yeah, and again, don't want to get too many into story spoilers, but your decisions do impact how the world shows up.
And will we be able to control our companions in combat through tactical mode, or if the PC or player character gets KO'd like in previous games?
Right. So if Rook gets KO'd, your player character gets knocked out. This time around, it is time to reload your save, or better yet, the companions have really interesting progression. You can spec them out to be able to revive you, but that's if you've invested in their own progression and what they can do. And that said, I mentioned this earlier, but I personally spend more time in the nature of this combat system when everything comes together, interacting and directing the companions than I have in any of the other games. So like that interactivity between them, once you play it, you'll see how just engaged the team is.
And user named It's Sarah said, my real most important Dragon Age question is, will Solus still occasionally or dramatically speak in iambic pentameter?
I actually spent a little bit of time trying to figure out if I wanted to answer this question and I have a pentameter, and then I very quickly gave up. Massive kudos to Patrick, who always writes Solus so well. Again, Solus is a returning character. It's the same Solus you know and love or hate, depending on who you are. Same writer, so I think this has been the answer is, well, yeah, it's Solus.
Will our decision of who in particular was left behind in the Fade be important?
So while that decision does not show up, sorry, let me restart. Not for the Veilguard. That decision doesn't show up here. Now, that said, that doesn't mean that that's not a decision that'll ever be important in the future. So again, not for this one, though.
I'm glad to hear you say that, John, because one of my favorite stories was Bob getting stuck in the web in Reboot, and it just feels like
that's a deep cut.
That's a deep
Holy
cut.
smoke.
My goodness.
Sound of my childhood.
Will we have mounts again? If so, any hints to what types we'll have?
So no mount. Excuse me. Mounts were they addressed a need in Inquisition that we don't have in Veilguard, and you'll see why when you get to play.
Lightning Star asks, how is the side quest designed? Will they be mostly story-based, or will there be a lot of Radiant quests or resources or power, like in Inquisition?
We talked about it a little bit earlier, but no, they are all handcrafted and story-focused. Again, narrative, the companions, not just the companions, but the characters in the world as a whole are so much at the core of the Veilguard that anything other than handcrafted quests just felt like it would be a disservice to the game we were building.
And maybe we can clarify as well, because like power is such a divisive mechanic in Inquisition. There's no mechanic like that blocks your progression until you fill a bar, right? Like that's just not a thing in this. You have the autonomy to engage in these quests as you like. There's no like, grind out gates before you can progress.
That's right. Yeah. Again, we want to make sure that doing this content feels as natural and part of the logical flow of the story as possible.
So it looks like we only have time for 3 more questions, so I'm going to get through those. This next one is from someone named Jason. Will there be a similar system to the War Table missions?
Oh, interesting. So we haven't talked much about the player's base, the lighthouse, and we're gonna save that for a beat. But what I will say is that the lighthouse, your headquarters, so to speak, it has its own unique purposes and functions this time. So that's an area that we'll leave for you when we talk more about the lighthouse, and then when you have a chance to hop in, you'll be able to see what those unique purposes and functions are.
If there is dual wield for warriors, will it rely on dexterity or strength?
Okay, yeah. So we did want to bring dual wielding back. It is part of the rogue kit this time. So warriors are really focused on mighty two-handed weapons. Can't wait till you see when you swing and connect with those weapons. There's a real heft to it, and then of course sword and shield. So we're leaving the dual wielding to the rogues, but you can see just the amount of hits you can get in rapid succession dual wielding as a rogue. It's really satisfying.
And the last question that we're able to get to today is what have been some of the challenges and advantages of working on a single game for so many years? How did you sustain the work and yourselves in the process?
That is a fantastic question. I will say for myself, I've often joked, and I don't know how much of a joke it actually is, that when this game is out and I suddenly don't have to keep all of these pieces of game and lore and story and everything straight in my head, I'm suddenly going to be able to speak Latin or something because there's going to be a ton of brain power freed up. But for me, it's just, it's the thing that keeps me sustained is just knowing the game that we're building is the right one, knowing that the pieces are coming together, and knowing just how much people care about this franchise, care about these games, and how excited people are going to be when they get to see the fantastic work that the team has been doing. That really is exciting. I can say I've been on this project since the start, and even today, I see things on a daily basis. I'm like, holy smokes! Sorry, I almost swore. Holy smokes! I can't believe what the team is doing. I can't believe how good this looks. I can't believe, because it's a huge game. There's pieces that I don't see every piece of the game every day, so I get pleasantly surprised on a daily basis. And that, I will say, confession. Sometimes if I'm having a particularly long day, I'll spend about an hour late at night just watching cutscenes coming in, watching the work coming together, and just sitting back and be like, holy smokes, I cannot wait for someone who hasn't seen this every day for so long as I have to experience this and just be blown away by the work. So
It's been very real, hasn't it? And I will just say, speaking on behalf of the dev team, everyone's working so hard. They're putting so much passion, so much of themselves into it. Like, this is a franchise they truly love, and seeing your support, cheering us on, it's just meant a lot to them. So let me just say thank you to all of you.
And I want to say thank you to you three for taking the time to do this. I know that it matters a lot to the community to be able to, get some time with you guys and, make sure that some of their dying questions are answered. So thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to do this. For anyone who's still listening, I promise that I'm working on a way for these questions to be immortalized somewhere. Stay tuned for that, so that you don't have to worry about this just disappearing into the ether. So stay tuned. Thank you all for your time. Anything else we want to say before we jump off?
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm super excited to show more of this. And yeah, this is going to be, hopefully, this is the first of many of these opportunities to talk to you all directly. Again, it's been a while, and getting to talk about this game has been absolutely exciting. I know for myself as well, for the rest of the team. So thank you all.
Just thank you. It's the Dragon Age community, how much it means to you, how much it means to us. It's just wonderful to see you all so invested and excited to come here and talk to us. Thank you again, truly.
We'll hopefully do something like this again soon. Okay, cool. Have a great day, everybody. Talk
Bye,
soon.
y'all.
Bye.